the law of the sea. Now, on May the 3rd of every year, the world celebrates and evaluates press freedom across the world. And this year's celebration comes at a time when freedoms seem to be dwindling in some of the world's most progressive countries, as other countries tighten their choke on freedom of the media. Our reporter Trick Singado did bring us that report earlier on, but for now, let's speak to Ashley Mazuri just to give us a glance at media freedom in East Africa.
Good morning, Misha.
Good morning, Ashley. Great, thank you.
Should I say happy World Press Freedom Day?
Happy World Press Freedom Day to you too.
Okay, I'll go right to the statistics. Media freedom at a glance. Bits covered by victims in the media freedom. Of course, politics, 46% of guys who die from politics, 41% usually cover war, and then 21% human rights and 20% corruption. Of course, we have 11% for culture, 4% usually cover business, 16% cover crime, and 2% cover sports. But before that, according to the Committee to Protect Journalists website, they say that 1,236 journalists were killed since 1962,
right.
And then 452 journalists were forced into exile since 2010. And in 2016, the prison census, 259 journalists were jailed worldwide. Of course, the 5 deadliest countries here are Iraq, with around 179 journalists being killed every year, and 108 in Syria, 78 in Philippines, 62 in Somalia, and of course 60 in Algeria.
It's alarming to see that these numbers of journalists killed and being incarcerated are rising as the years go by.
Yes, so we had already gone through this, but let's go back to Kenya, come back to our country. Of course, last year the journalists staged protests after freelance journalist Dennis Otieno was killed. Of course, his wife said that he was killed at his home by 3 assailants. And they asked for a photograph right before they shot him. So this tells us what exactly journalism is being faced in the country.
All right. Thank you so much, Ashley Mazuri, there with an outlook of the media freedom at a glance. But let's now speak to the Deputy CEO of the Media Council of Kenya, Victor Bwire, joining us from our City Centre studios. Bwire, good morning to you, and happy World Media Freedom Day to you as well. Let's begin with an outlook. Ashley Mazuri has just taken us through some statistics. What are your thoughts on the state of media freedom in Kenya?
Thank you, and happy World Press Freedom Day. The situation in Kenya is not as bad as elsewhere, but obviously the conditions, the working environment for journalists has not been the most encouraging or exciting of late, and just like the global statistics are showing that the situation is getting bad day by day, that's exactly what's happening. While in Kenya, it's not the extreme cases of how many have been killed, but yes, we have a number of journalists who have died in line of duty, who up to now has never been known what happened. We have the case of Francis Nyaruri in Nikisi, John Kitui in Eldoret. We have mentioned Otieno. We have mentioned in Kitale. We have mentioned Masha at the coast. There was Wesonga who also died at the coast. So yes, there are cases of that. Obviously, we also have a few journalists who have had to leave the country. But one of the statistics that we are getting from Kenya so far is that remember last week we were ranked number 95 by Freedom House and Reporters Without Borders. Our situation has always remained at the bottom for obvious reasons. That while on paper Kenya has one of the freest media within the region, with nearly 139 radio stations, about 60 TV stations, and nearly 4,000 journalists working in the country. But the legal environment has not been very conducive. And obviously looking at this is that one of the key things that is happening is that while previously it was state-perpetrated harassment of journalists, while it was largely government agencies, in Kenya the statistics are changing, just like what we have shown globally, that most of the cases we are getting of harassment of journalists is largely from either businessmen or political activists that are perpetuating. So we see government-sponsored harassment of journalists going down big time. But obviously, again, those statistics differ when you go to counties, that we now see the devolution of harassment of journalists, so that quite a number of our journalists in the counties are getting it rough. We have received nearly 32 cases of journalists being harassed or being stopped from doing their work across. So that's not very encouraging. Obviously, even when you saw just recently within the party primaries, we get a number of journalists who are harassed, who are not allowed to work, who are again branded of belonging to one candidate or a particular party, and for that reason they were stopped from working. We have seen one of the media houses being trolled online, and one of the political party groups pushing their supporters to boycott products of that particular media house. Those are obviously harassment incidences. Our legal environment, while we have Article 34 of the Constitution that provides for media freedom, there are obviously some still laws in our statute books that need to be harmonized, because we still have laws like criminal defamation. We still have laws like the Official Secrets Act. We still have the Books and Newspaper Act 1979, which still also constrain media freedom in the country. So that has happened. Obviously, there have been cases of interference, of independence work. We see quite a number of journalists being pushed out of work. And when you see the reasons they are being pushed, it's not because they are not performing, but obviously for reasons that are not necessarily work-related. So that is happening.
That being said, because it is common knowledge now that we have corporate advertisers, we also have politicians who use their financial muscle to impose self-censorship on the media. But we're now heading to the election period, a very sensitive period, especially for Kenya. How then do we still maintain media independence in this period? Thank you.
It's quite a challenge. Our colleagues, the journalists, are going to work in a very disturbing and harassing environment, because, like I said, you obviously see from the primaries the pressure that was put on our journalists, the harassment that was pushed. Obviously, the corporates, especially the advertisers, you obviously had that mention where government has obviously said that they will be running their own adverts in their own platforms. And remember, government forms almost 30% of government of media advertisement, and other private corporates have already started showing that. So obviously, that will have a huge impact on media, because that's a major revenue stream, and once the revenue stream is affected, then obviously they will have to do away, or journalists will have to work under very difficult circumstances, including without pay. Obviously, because of this, we already have a lot of media houses that now have gone for months without paying their staff, and people who are not paid obviously will have an effect when they go to work and they are compromised in their work because somebody has bills to pay. So we are very worried that if this trend continues, we might not see a very professional media for that reason. So we're already putting in place a few mechanisms.
All right, let's focus on that for a bit, because in addition to those external interferences and politicians and corporate financiers coming in to interfere, the professionalism and the integrity of some journalists is also an issue that has received a lot of criticism, even from the public. There is allegations of reporters and journalists soliciting for bribes just to do a story, and the wider perception by the public is that that is also an infringement to media freedom, because the public is not getting as objective a story as they should.
That's true. We have dealt with such cases where because of that influence, quite a number, while a number of journalists are doing professional work, and we are happy to associate ourselves with the work they are doing under the difficult circumstances, but quite a number also within our medias are not doing their work professionally, and this has compromised journalism to a high level. We now have serious cases in places like, for example, Mombasa, in places largely Mombasa, largely areas like Meru. I mean, areas like there's a serious complaints from members of the public of where journalists have turned into selling news, and yet news is for free. I mean, news has become a product for sale. And obviously, again, we also see a big number of people who used to be journalists or who are no longer, who are masqueraders, who have just bought cameras and recorders, who are moving in town claiming to be journalists. So you go to a press conference, for example, a political press conference, where you get 80 or 100 people claiming to be journalists. So there's an increase now, and this is affecting journalism big time, that people now don't know who they are dealing with. Are we dealing with a genuine journalist? Are we not dealing with a genuine? So there are too many quacks who have also infiltrated the industry, and we are appealing, I mean, we're working with the media houses, with the police, to see how to deal with the problem of quacks. Because with the politics now, everybody seems to be claiming to be a journalist. They just need to buy a biro and whatever. And even that has affected that even now cases where genuine journalists are being targeted for malice and trolling online and related. We see even the big politician, obviously politician singling out particular media houses who they think are aligned. Remember, this is also rooted in how our media houses are owned. Quite a number of the same politicians have interests in various media houses. So we have especially vernacular radio stations, which are owned by particular known people who are greatly influencing the content and arrangement of stories there, and which is very, very unprofessional.
All right, Victor, finally and very briefly, with 139 TV stations, 60 radio stations, and 60 newspaper publications, we still rank rather low internationally. What does Kenya have to do to see us rank higher in the global media freedom indexes?
Thank you. Where we have failed is purely in the legal environment. When they are doing Freedom House or Reporters Without Borders are doing their rating of countries, they look at the legal environment of a country. So while Kenya, like you said, we have seem to have a very liberal and a very independent media sphere. But remember, first of the things is that Kenya as a country does not have a media policy. So when we don't have a media policy, then that makes us rank very poorly. Two, when we still have laws like criminal defamation, official secrets acts, and related, about 13 laws, censorship act, laws are still in the country, then we still rank. So we need to harmonize to upgrade our laws to be consistent with the current constitution, because we have one of the biggest and I mean the freest laws in terms of Bill of Rights, Article 34, 33, and 35. But once we still have laws like the Books and Newspaper Act, the Censorship Act, the Criminal Defamation Act, then globally we'll still rank very poorly. So we need to, as a country, to start looking at how do we, for example, start having to put in place a media policy. Two, how do we, for example, remove criminal defamation from our laws? How do we upgrade or remove the Books and Newspaper Act? How do we, for example, quickly look at the KBC, Kenya Broadcasting Act, and such laws? Once we harmonize our legal environment, I think we have one of the best in terms of legal environment and really practice. It's a huge industry. Again, we as a country must start looking at media as a huge industry that can help the country in generating revenue. Media is not just about coverage and press conference. Media is a huge industry that will involve training institutions, that involve those radio, they employ a huge amount of advertising. Is a huge industry. So we need to treat media as a professional industry that can play a big role in national development.
All right, thank you. Victor Bwire is the Deputy CEO of the Media Council of Kenya, joining us live from our